What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Giggle podcast. As always, this is your host, Ashish, aka ShiShi, aka my voice cracks in the intro sometimes. My guest on the show today is none other than Phil Butler. Phil is the founder of an incredible technology company and app called Radiate, with the express stated purpose and mission of connecting people all over the world. They started out as a festival connection app where people attending the same music festivals could meet up. So if you're going alone, you could meet a stranger, you can meet up with a crew, you might even find a romantic connection, you could have a ride to share to go to the festival. And quickly it's turned into an amazingly successful, both financially and emotionally for those involved, beautiful company that has spawned all kinds of amazing connections. People have met on the app and gotten married. It really is an incredible purpose-driven company. And as you guys will hear from Phil's vibe and his whole energy and everything that he's about, it really is an extension of him as a human being. Phil is one of the most positive, uplifting, community-oriented people I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. I feel honored and blessed to call him a friend. And he's just such an inspiring person because he's created a company that's truly in alignment with him and his values. And he's genuinely just one of the most uplifting people that I know. And I know that I'm not alone in saying that. We have a lot of the same friends and everybody feels this way about Phil. And he really is just a special human being. In this chat, we get into the origins of his company. We talk about where he feels his strengths of positivity and self-belief and optimism come from. We really dig deep, as we always do on this podcast. So I would highly urge anybody out there who wants to feel inspired, wants to get some of that good magic, positive juju from Phil, to check out this episode. Also, for any aspiring entrepreneurs or artists or just anybody that's trying to live a life on their own terms, this is a really inspiring conversation with somebody that has done just that. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Philip Butler. Phil, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. You know, life's good. I can move all my fingers. I can move all my toes. No complaints. How about you?
That is a great litmus test for gratitude. You just wake up, you're like, I still have all my motor functioning. Life is good.
Exactly. You smile from then on, you know? Could be way worse after that.
That's actually a perfect segue. So as I was explaining before we started recording a second ago, this podcast is a little bit different. And in my opinion, it's different because, unlike just a typical interview, my goal is really to talk to people that, yes, okay, they're they're successful in the conventional sense, but people who I just am really inspired by as human beings. And in addition to being one of my best friends in the entire world, you are definitely one of those people. And I think the way that you even just started this conversation is a great place to start. Something that I have always admired about you, and I've told you this many times, and all of my friends that I've introduced you to have felt the same thing. I think this is just an effect that you have on people, is this incredible positivity that you seem to carry with you, and this incredible sense of self-love that is just permeating through you in a really authentic way. Because sometimes, you meet people and like, we've all met that person that's just like always like super excited, and you're just like, I don't know if this is like real or not, and I'll be honest, like when I first met you, and this was like 2014, 15, I was like, how is this guy in such a good mood all the time? Like, this is insane. But then I genuinely, and I'm not saying that you're always in a good mood, but I genuinely feel like this is a superpower that you have. I don't know if you feel this way, but I would love to kind of dig into, before we start talking about Radiate and your company and all that stuff, I want to kind of just take it back and ask you the question, like, just do some self-reflecting. Where do you think this positivity that you have comes from? Like, where did it originate?
Yeah, that's one of the age-old mysteries of the world I've been trying to crack. I think as I've gotten older, more people have brought this trait up to me. I guess like ever since I was 25, and people started kind of bringing this up, and I was like, yeah, I guess that is something I do, in the sense of I just don't like, I guess I don't think and I don't know where this comes from, but a lot of sad memories or things that get you mad, I think are more physiological reactions, right? So it's kind of like your body gets shocked because you hear some news. And I think that shock leads to like, you yelling or you crying. And, I think that there's healthy ways to do that stuff too. But I guess the way that I've kind of always coped has been through realizing that it could be worse, right? And now where does that come from? I don't know exactly. Parents probably have to do something, with it, in the sense that my parents weren't, I would say, like rich in the sense of like wealth, but we always had presents under the Christmas tree. Food was always on the table, and I never felt like we didn't have. So I think seeing my parents kind of just like go through their trials and tribulations, but always with a smile and knowing that everything was going to be okay, definitely rubbed off on you. But I also think it's kind of just, whether or not people can just like manifest a type of personality. I think it was just kind of how I always dealt with things, was just, happiness no matter what, in the sense that as long as I can get up the next morning, I can make it better. And I think that's kind of what keeps me going when things get rough. It's just kind of like in the sense of like, the clouds might be rainy right now, but just like in real life, they pass and then you have some sun, right? So I think that's my underlying value, but where it comes from, it's a mystery of the world still. I'm still trying to uncover exactly what makes me smile the way I do right now.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. And the word that was coming to my mind as I was hearing you talk is something that maybe people might not immediately associate with being really positive all the time. But the word that was actually coming to my mind was accountability. But like self-responsibility, like when you say that, like, okay, it's my job to always keep things in perspective and realize that I do have all 10 of my fingers and toes this morning. Whatever situation I'm in, I can make it better. And I've noticed, just because we're such good friends, like we've hung out in so many different situations. We've been at raves together, festivals, like traveled, we've done projects together. And I'm so grateful for our friendship. And we've been in situations where that could be stressful. Like, I remember, I think it was like 2015 or 16, we did a festival down in Kansas City called Dance Festopia. And your company, Radiate, which we'll talk about later, had a stage there. And I was one of the artists. And I remember like, there was a whole situation that you had to deal with figuring out which artist had to play when. And I just remember watching you keep such a cool head and keeping that smile on your face from a place of, it's my responsibility to bring this positivity to this situation. And I think it's just a beautiful quality, because sometimes we think of positivity as like you can't be positive all the time. It's not realistic, or like, and there is a lot of kind of toxic positivity too, I think, out there, where people don't want to like confront the reality of what's happening. But I think the way you're describing yourself and the way that you're describing how you were raised is very different, in the sense that it's actually extremely realistic, because you're actually just accepting whatever's happening. And then you're taking responsibility after the fact to say, okay, the situation is what it is. How can I get perspective and just show up as well as I can and take as much responsibility as I can? I'm curious if that self-responsibility, if you've ever thought about it, if you think that has something to do with your wanting to be an entrepreneur and kind of be your own boss as well.
Yeah. So I guess kind of and sort of. I think the reason that I turned towards entrepreneurship was because I was tired of working for other people, in the sense that like I would see like how much money I would make the company. And then I'd be like, okay, like I did all this work, yet you guys are paying me like 20% of one project. And so that's disheartening. Like when you see that and you like, you're working all this time and putting in all this effort, and someone else is receiving the majority of the product that I guess you're producing, right? As like a human or as someone in the workforce. So that there was that aspect that turned me into an entrepreneur. And then I think it was for some reason, and I think it might be, I did Model UN as a little kid, if you know what that is. Like you pretend to be in the United Nations and come up with like, how to save the world and like different scenarios. And I think when I was doing that, that led me just to like kind of want to help people, in the sense of like, one of the reasons that like I do what I do is because I just want to change the world, like leave it better than I found it. And through Radiate, like, knock on wood, like I have done that. I'm going to do more. But I think those were the two main reasons I turned to entrepreneurship. The positivity part, I think that helps being an entrepreneur, in the sense that like, it's not always easy, right? And so like you see a drop in metrics. Well, you could either yell and cry, or you could like smile and be like, well, at least it's not lower, right? Like, how do we go from here? So I think that's, that's how I kind of got through COVID, with all the festivals and events canceling. But I think the biggest thing for positivity that maybe led me to entrepreneurship was probably just through my friends and kind of like positive reinforcement, in the sense that like, if I was who I was and the people around me didn't appreciate it or told me that like that wasn't cool, and like you always run into these people who call them like Zed, right? Or whatever their name is, that'll just kind of be like negative, right? No matter what you do, right? No matter how nice you are, they're going to find something and stick it to you. And that happens. But I think overall, how I act from like my friend group and just people in general gets rewarded in the sense that they like me. And I think that gave me confidence to like be who I am and to go for something different that's not on kind of like what society tells you to do. And so I think that aspect of it probably helped me with entrepreneurship. But the two main reasons were kind of just wanting to help people and, change the world in my own way, and just not liking working for other people in the general sense.
Yeah, the self-belief that you talked about is something that I've witnessed in you a lot. I remember, just there have been times where you've sent me a pitch deck and you've been like, I'm about to go into this meeting, or even ideas that you guys have had, and I'll prompt you about the cruise ship with no Wi-Fi. I think that's such a brilliant chapter in the history of Radiate.
Mm-hmm,
but
definitely.
I've noticed that the self-belief of like, I'm going to go into this meeting and I got this pitch deck, and just fully believing that you are going to achieve your desired outcome. And, I think I'm not going to go on a rant and say it's like some big conspiracy, but I remember like in business school, when I was in school, like there were entrepreneurship classes, like just constantly are getting heard, 99% of startups fail, and like, you got to have a plan B. And it's like, statistically, sure, that may be true, but it's like, just when constantly intaking that information, like what does that do to somebody's psyche? And I think that's just, again, like it's easier to sort of cop out from what your real dreams are and just like submit to that belief that like it's just too big of a dream or you can't do it. And that's something that I've really learned from you, like that's, to be vulnerable on my end, like I've definitely haven't always had that like full on belief that, well, I could just make my dreams. I'm like just kind of fully stepping into that now at age like 31, 32, after doing a lot of work on myself. And I'm grateful for my journey, because I know that I'm not the only one. And like the way that I share my journey, I know helps a lot of people. But I think that self-belief is so critical to be an entrepreneur. And, I guess this is where we can kind of maybe pivot the conversation into how Radiate was started. And I would love if you could just tell the dear listeners out there about a special girl named Tabitha and what she meant to you in your life.
Still haven't found her. So yeah, so here, Radiate started as, I guess, the combination of two ideas. My co-founder, Michael, who's also one of my best friends, had an idea to bring people together around their gyms or their sporting studio. So you could kind of say like, hey, I need a spot, or who wants to grab a drink after we work out, and kind of see in real time who was there. So you would kind of know when to go to the gym, when not to go to the gym. He didn't end up pursuing this for a number of reasons. And at that time, I was working on another website called Ref Finder, where you could hire referees online. And my technical co-founder at that time joined the Navy, but not just normal Navy. He went on a nuclear submarine. So like we were not calling, we were not chatting. He was just surviving at the bottom of the ocean. And I was like, okay, I could either wait 4 or 5 years for him to kind of finish his deployment and like be able to like code again, or I could just learn how to code. And so I'd saved up some money from my jobs that I was at. And I was basically like, okay, I'm going to take 6 months. I'll just drop everything. I'll learn to code. And during that, Michael and I reconnected. And he told me about his idea. I told him about an idea where, ever played the game Guess Who? Does he have red hair? And he'd say, no. So I told him about an idea where basically if I was at a music festival and I was at a certain stage and I met somebody, I could kind of input data. So I could say, I met Ashish at the cashier stage and he was wearing a tank top and had, awesome red hair. If I put these things and you had entered in your characteristics, then it'd match, right? Or you get a notification saying, hey, someone's looking for you. Look at me, and then match. So it was like a misconnections idea. So I told him about this and he said, well, why not just make Tinder for festivals? And I was like, yes, Tinder for festivals, right? We were younger. Tinder was cooler. And to be frank, we were probably both more into online dating than we should have been at that time, but that's the way the world works. And that's what society told us to do, right? We were just swiping. So we make this app, we give it to our friends and they say, hey, this is really cool, but I'm looking for a ride. I'm trying to sell my ticket. I already have a significant other, but it'd be great to meet new people and split an Airbnb. And so we looked at each other and we said, well, life is about so much more than dating. Why not make it about community and finding the people in your community And like sex, love, rock and roll, it's going to happen, right? We're all human. And so once we did that is when we changed the platform from being kind of about dating to be more about finding your community, finding these people that you can't connect with outside of these shared experiences. And once we did that, we listed a bunch of types of events. So we put up like just Harvard as like a college, New York City as just a city, Bonnaroo, and a few other big festivals. And Bonnaroo was the one where people were actually doing what we thought they would do. And so once we saw that, we stripped everything else from the platform and made it solely about music festivals. And once we did that, we kind of just iterated on the concept of wanting to bring people together. That's something that Michael and I both find joy in doing, is just like kind of figuring out when or how we can help people connect with each other more. And I think the reason that this is such a problem is because the way society is structured is like you're given friends through schooling all through your life, or your neighbors in a sense, right? So like when you first are, 1 to 5, who's your best friend? Well, it's either your mom's, sister who also had a kid at the same time, your neighbor, or your elementary school, more than likely, right? You go to middle school, you find your best friend at middle school. You go to high school, if it's not the same best friend, you have a high school best friend. College, you find new friends. After college, I think a lot of young people find this jarring. You move to a different state, you go back home. What do you do now, right? You have no social, like built-in social dynamics from society. And the one place we do find it still is through shared experiences, right? Music festivals, traveling together, going to like a Comic-Con, Oktoberfest. And I think that's what we're kind of trying to unlock, is just, giving people a way to connect with each other outside of these dating apps, because, life is not about just sex and love. It's about so many more things, right? Going on an adventure, listening to this music that you love, just hugging a random stranger that you just met in a field, like platonically. These are like the things that make a human, I feel like, human. And like what makes us happy in the moments when everything looks like shit is like the memories when you have a shared experience that was special, that like just sticks out. So that's kind of like how we got to where we were and like how Radiate came to be. And Tabitha, though, was the kind of like impetus for my idea of finding somebody. Was there was a girl named Tabitha who I met at a music festival. I forget which one at this moment, but I think it might have been Sonic Bloom. She had blue hair. She wore black. So this would happen basically for 2 days or 3 days in a row. We didn't exchange info, but we'd run into each other and lose our friend groups and just have the best time for 2 or 3 days. And then we'd say like, all right, like maybe see you later. And it would happen for 2 or 3 days. The final day, we don't run into each other. And I realized that, I might not ever see this person again. And when that happened was kind of when I had this concept of like, damn, I wish there was a platform where I could enter some information and reconnect with Tabitha. So if Tabitha, I've done about 3 podcasts now and I've built a whole platform. So if you happen to hear this, pretty easily findable.
Tabitha, you heard it here first. Email Phil at the Sacred Giggle at Tabitha. Oh my God. It's so beautiful, man. And I love the way that you explain the importance and the value of community. It's funny, like I'm like, as you know, very health conscious, and I'm like always reading about like dieting and like how to like live to 120 and like, well, and all this stuff. And it's funny, like the number one indicator of longevity and just like generally having a good life is community. It's like more important than diet, more important than you sleep, everything. It's just, that's the number one thing. And loneliness is such an issue for all the reasons you described. Like, I know I've faced that myself. I was in a fraternity in college. It was like this built-in social network. And then exactly how you described, like I graduated, lived at home. Some of my friends came to New York, but it was really difficult. And then just year after year, I kind of pieced this ragtag community of people together. And that's the case for a lot of people. You find people that you just vibe with, and it's over some shared experience or set of values. And I think music festivals, as we both have experienced, are such powerful experiences. Like people go there ready to connect, ready to be loving and compassionate towards each other. Yeah, I think that love of community, I've said this to you many times before. I don't think I know any other person in my life whose work feels like as much of a natural extension of their authentic personality as you. Like, it's like the word radiate is what I would use to describe you, and I'm curious if you feel that way too, because obviously there's a lot of like work that goes into it too. It's at the end of the day, it's a tech company and you need to make money and stuff. That initial like inspiration to connect people. I know it was the phase where you thought it was going to be just dating, and then you took feedback from your friends and realized it could be so much more. And now it's gotten to the point where people have gotten married off of your app, and just like unbelievable
amazing things, which feel so fulfilling. Do you feel like at its core, as it's grown and as you guys continue to grow, do you feel like Radiate is still sort of giving you that same feeling personally of like that of fulfillment that you're really connecting people?
Yeah, I do. It's twofold though, because I guess after you do anything for a long time, you start to feel like you could be doing more, right? In the sense that like running a startup is a more than full-time job, right? So it's like you never really leave it at the door. But maybe I want to write a book, right? Maybe I want to hop on a ShiShi track and do some vocals, right? There's all these other things that I feel like I would like to do, and the current kind of, I guess, requirements of me to like make sure that I'm here doing what I need to do to get this to the next level takes away from some of those things. But what gives it back to me, whenever I am feeling like, dang, like I wish I didn't have to take this 2-hour meeting so I could, go write my book or, just go lay down in a field, right? Like is you open up the platform and like you see all these like genuine connections, right? And you see these people who met once off Radiate, now they're best friends. They've traveled to like 7 different countries. All platonically, right? Just like for a friend meeting a friend, or you open it up and like you see a baby that was made because of like 2 people that were made on Radiate, right? And it reminds you like that what you're doing actually has purpose in the sense that, if I was just working at like no offense, to anybody working at like a finance company, but if I was just working at like a finance company, like making money out of money, basically doing something where I couldn't see the actual effect would be hard for me in the sense that like I keep going because I see that what we're doing actually has an impact on people's lives and their lives change, which causes like a ripple effect to the next person and so on and so on. So I do feel like through Radiate, the one thing I've always wanted to do is just like leave the world in a better place than I left it. And I do feel like I'm not going to do this, but if I did die, like, today, I'd be happy in the sense that I knew I changed the world in some sense. Right. So yeah, I guess like that's kind of where I stand on that in a sense.
Yeah, man. I feel like what you're touching on is there's a certain level of diminishing returns to just satisfying yourself. It's like a carrot dangling in front of you. And it's like the more you scratch the itch, the more you create a reality where there's an itch to be scratched.
100%.
What you're talking about actually seeing your work change people's lives and impact people and positively impact people and how validating that feels. That's so important, I think. And it's something that, I think the shadow side of that is like only doing things for others and like not worrying about whether it makes you happy. And I think we're kind of like in a cultural moment and where we have been for the last 10, 20 years because our society is so individualistic. And I think social media has like exacerbated this more because people can literally make a living as influencers, which is amazing. But I think there has been this shift toward, well, I'm just going to like worry about me and like make sure I'm good. And like, even the way that people set goals, it's like, what are my goals? Like, how much money do I want to be making a month or a year? What's my ideal lifestyle? How can I know that that's often how many people, myself included, to a degree, like make decisions about where they should work or what they should do. Like, I remember when I was in business school, yeah, everybody kind of is like, yeah, it'll be nice to make a difference, but like, I have a certain quality of life and I want to maintain that. And I think it's about finding a balance between those two things. And everybody's somewhere on the spectrum. And also, there's a spectrum this way from like service to others, service to self. And I think people that I've found, like yourself, who seem really fulfilled and happy, have found a way to satisfy both of those with the same thing. And then there's like another spectrum from small to large in terms of the scale at which you do that. I think that this is something we talked about when we were in Turks and Caicos last year. And like, I was kind of asking you like how the business is going and like when you'll kind of be satisfied to maybe like do an exit or something like that. And you were like, I think it to some degree, it's human nature. And also for people like us that are like pretty ambitious and want to have a big impact. Like we want to keep having a bigger and bigger impact. Like for the longest time, my goal was to have 1 million streams on a song. And then once that happened, I was like, okay, like now I need like 10 million. And now I think that's a really important thing. There's like a quote where it's like, the first thing you notice when you climb the mountaintop is like how many more peaks there are ahead of you to go. And I think it's just an interesting thing to think about. Like, when does it end? And when does the chase end? Or maybe it's not about like getting to the end of the chase, but just finding a chase that you really enjoy, Have you thought about that? Like with Radiate? Like, I mean, I know not to disclose anything that shouldn't be disclosed, but like in terms of having an exit or things like that, Like, do you see a future horizon where like you would just like do something completely different? Or do you feel like there's that a bit of that like itch that you need to just keep scratching, you know?
I think I could always probably do something different, but I guess I look at Radiate as like my child in the sense that like, he or she, they grow, right?
They
And you,
politically correct.
yeah. Not getting canceled today. So
It grows.
yeah, it grows, it grows. But the way I look at Radiate is like a child, right? Like Michael and I are the fathers, and we have this baby, and it's my job to grow it so that it can be independent of me and like live a happy life and keep on changing the world, right? Like that, I feel like is the goal for majority of founders, right? Maybe not like someone like Mark Zuckerberg. I think he has like a different viewpoint on it, but like you look at Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, and like they do all these companies to get them to a certain point, and then like you're able to let it go, right? In the sense like Amazon grew up to be a healthy adult, and Jeff Bezos knows that if he went and did something different, that kid is going to live and keep on doing its thing, right? So that's what I look at like on Radiate. Like if it's any type of exit scenario, it's like who's going to take care of my child, right? In the sense that like I own the minority now. It's not up to me to say anymore like this is what she or he or they should be doing. It'll be the next person. So that's how I look at the exit, is like, is it a good place to put my kid? If the answer is yes, then answer's probably yes. And then we have all our investors and all that jazz too, right? Who like need to also say yes. But that's the way I look at it, is like if whoever it is a good place to put the kid and it'll help them grow as an independent person, then by all means, like that's where we should go.
Do you feel like within yourself, like just because of your nature as a pretty ambitious person, you have big goals, like you want to change the world, right? Like even that language, it's like it's a big impact that you want to make. Do you feel like that is a specific target that is set, or is it just kind of a process that you're just like living?
I think it's more of a process I'm just living, right? I think like I know my North Star, like that goal is to change the world. So I just keep on looking at that and I walk towards that. And, right now that got me on the path of Radiate. But if I can keep looking up and, tells me to go this way, then I probably end up going that way. So I don't know exactly what comes next, right? After Radiate. And I do think that there's more to be done here, get it to be its full potential and like change the world as much as it could be. But no matter what happens, I suppose with Radiate, as long as I'm alive, I'll probably continue to try to impact others and do new things to have an impact. So yeah, I think it's just it's a process of just figuring out really what is that next thing if it's not still the current thing.
Right. I think it's kind of like taking your purpose or whatever it is that you're working on really seriously in the moment, but then in the long term, like holding it really lightly and like remembering that you're just a human being that is susceptible to changing. Like perfect example, like right now, one of my biggest values in life is freedom over my time, freedom over like, this is why I went to business school, got my MBA, worked in the corporate world for a while, and then like quit to be an artist, would make way less money. But it's like, that's because I've clearly have decided in my mind that I value freedom over monetary stability. But I also think about like, whenever I like have a family and kids, I will probably value the stability a lot more, or maybe I'll still value freedom, but I'll define it in a different way. Like, I think that what you said about like having the North Star and it being a process is so important for me right now. Like my sort of North Star is I want to be the first artist in history to play Coachella Sahara stage at sunset in front of 30,000 people. And then at the last 20 minutes of my set, I want to have 30,000 people lie down on the ground and do a sound healing for 30,000 people at Coachella, like in the middle of the festival. It sounds so ridiculous, but like that's my North Star. And it's like, it's kind of nice that it's so unbelievably like ambitious. It's not even about whether of course I would love to achieve that, but it's not, I'm comfortable if I don't achieve that. It's more just like that allows me to have a process daily that I really enjoy, I think that's the way that I have like sort of switched around in terms of setting goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100% agree. And I will be there for when that happens.
Yeah, it'll be the Radiate stage at that point. So, okay. So I want to also, this is something I had in my notes. I wanted to touch on this story, I just think I want people to know the story because I think it's so smart. And it's like another example of you and your co-founder, Michael, a friend of the show as well. Just you're both of your amazing sort of just ingenuity in the early days. So tell us about the story when Radiate partnered with a cruise ship festival and how you got people to sign up, because it sounds like that was a pretty pivotal moment in the business back in those days.
Yep. So once we figured out that what we were building sort of worked, right, to Bonnaroo, and that like, okay, music festival folks want to meet each other and having a good time, we thought to ourselves, all right, how can we replicate this in like a cool fashion and like get a bunch of people on at once? So there was a cruise ship called Holy Ship where they go on and they basically on a cruise. It's a music festival. So it's like 4 days of just living on a cruise ship and vibing, and all the DJs stay on the ship too. So it's really cool. And so Michael and I thought to ourselves, we're like, yo, let's just replicate our app Radiate and put it on the ship so that when you're out at sea, people can kind of talk to each other and connect, because there's no internet. So we were going to make an intranet. So basically you hook up to our local internet and can use the app. So we do all this stuff. We like replicate it. We put it on the giant server and we contact the festival, and the festival is like, hey, this is cool, but we basically can't do it because there's no signal. We tell them about like our intranet idea. They say like, yeah, like, you know, we're good. Michael and I are like, okay, like we're just going to do this anyways. So look, they never said no. I shouldn't say they never said no. They just said like, you know, it seems like it might not be possible. And so we were like, all right, let's just buy our own tickets and let's just do this. So we have this giant sketchy bag of like wires. I'm talking like 4 feet tall of just like wires and machinery, anything that looks like if somebody was going to do something nefarious on the cruise ship, like this bag should be checked by security. Cause like it is just, why do you need all these wires and why do you need all these cords? So we got on the cruise ship for the first time, check our bags, and everything seems fine. We're waiting for the bags to show up to your door because they bring them to you. And then they never show up. And I'm like, all right, guess we're going to have to go downstairs. So we go to security. And what I basically do is, without lying, I express to them that like, hey, we're here, we're working. This is the bag that has all the stuff so that people can connect. So I show them the app, you know, I click on Holy Ship. They never asked me, is this an official thing? So like never lied. I just, you know, told them that we're working, we're getting, you know, we need our bag to do the thing. So they give it to us. These two, I think they were like Dutch and German guys, because the international cruise ship. So like, you know, they look at it, they're like, and they give it to us, this giant sketchy bag, and we have our stuff. And what we do next is we start plugging everything into the ship. So there's this atrium area, kind of like the central point. It looks sketchy, right? It's like two guys in hoodies with this giant bag and a computer putting things in places. And we're almost done setting it up. We go to plug in the giant desktop computer that Michael calls Big Red, because it's a giant red computer. And we go to plug it in and we hear up. And we realize that at that point, we may have just blown a circuit on the cruise ship. So, so I look at Michael's face, and Michael's just like, and I'm like, uh-oh. And at that point, you know, we put it in another outlet. We've at that point kind of signaled to security that something is weird's happening, because I'm sure they got an alert that said like, you know, power down or something. So this giant dude, and I have this all on GoPro. I have a GoPro on my head. So this giant dude comes up to us, an all black security guys, and is like, what are you guys doing? And I tell him the same spiel I told people downstairs. Hey, we're working on this app that helps people meet each other through the thing. We're supposed to set this up for everybody. He says something into his microphone and he lets us do the thing. So we hook it all up and it's a success. I think we get like, there's 5,000 people that go down the ship. 2,500 people end up getting on the app. A bunch of the DJs get on, like Tommy Trash and Valentino Khan. And Tommy Trash runs into us in the hallway. And he sees us wearing our Radiate tanks. Like, are you the Radiate guys? He's Australian. This is my Australian.
Right.
Are you the Radiate guys? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, do you know how many people you got played? we hung out with him for a little bit, and it was pretty epic time. Then we did it again. We went back on the cruise ship and did it again. So we did it twice, and both times it worked. The second time, someone tried, like another attendee tried to like hack it in a sense. So we just turned it off on the last day. But it was a success for 98% of the time.
What an inspiring story, man. Like, it's just like, that's such an epic story. Just not taking no for an answer. You know, it's like,
yeah,
they were like, we're not interested. And then you guys literally buy your own tickets and like went there. I think that's a powerful thing for any artist or entrepreneur, or anyone who's like trying to do something that doesn't quite exist yet, to do, is like, just to know that I mean, it really inspires me just to know that there are going to be moments in time where you just have to like make something happen out of
Yeah,
thin
you just
air.
got to do it. Just try.
I'm sure that affirmed to both of you, like just even internally, like the fact that you're willing to do that is like the evidence, like this is serious. We're taking this seriously. This is not like, we're not playing around,
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, at that point it was like, let's do this. Let's go balls to the wall and just like give everything we have to make this happen. And, it was one of the sparks that helped things catch on for sure. And it's an awesome story. And I still have the GoPro footage. Every time I think about this, I think about going to find that GoPro footage. It's classic. I remember watching it and like you get the conversation with that security guard who comes up to us after we pop the thing is just so funny to listen to. Cause like I used every word I could use without lying. Cause you don't want to ever be in a situation where like you said you were, the official app would be like, no, I just said I was working here, so
Right.
It's a really good combo. It's a really good combo.
I feel like whenever the Radiate documentary airs on Netflix after, you guys go public and make $1 billion, I feel like that'll definitely be in there. Like the launch party that we all did together in Brooklyn out of the Junction bus, shout out Tumalo in Brooklyn. And I think it's also just so cool. Like, one thing we haven't touched on is your relationship with your co-founder, Michael. We got to do a round 2 and I'll have both of you guys on for that. But
yeah,
I just think you guys have such a great chemistry and it's a great example of complementary skill sets for a business. And I actually didn't know this earlier in our chat when you mentioned that you left your job and you decided to try to learn coding. Like, I don't know if you'd ever told me that before, but then you happen to find this like brilliant computer engineer from Harvard who's like amazing. And I mean, obviously you guys are great friends too. And I think that's like important to have personal chemistry, but I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with actually, like whether you're an entrepreneur or an artist. Like I know artists can really, like myself, can really struggle with like letting go of control, especially when it's like your baby or your idea, to somebody to do like the marketing and selling stuff. And just really deep down, that's what you actually want, is just to focus on your strengths and find someone who's like good at the things that are not your strengths and team up. But I know like when it's your baby, it can be hard. Like, did you feel any of that at the beginning or was it like pretty organic with Michael?
It was pretty organic with Michael, but it's also, I am also like very much a giver in the sense that like I could care less if my face is on Forbes as long as like I know that I changed the world. So like I'm a good partner in the sense that I share, right? Like if there's an interview for one person, like I have no problem if Michael takes it and vice versa, right? Which is why we make good partners. But I think like in any type of partnership, you need to be willing to give, right? I think that's the only reason, that's the only way it works, is understanding that if you have a partner, you're not going to always be the only person who's in the front of the camera. And so Michael and I growing up as friends was great because, it was funny because he himself grew up kind of like less social. His parents, so like we know each other through fencing since we were 12. And because he went with his parents to all the tournaments, he wouldn't really come to like the parties afterwards. But he knew that I would throw these parties because my parents let me travel alone. So I think in any good partnership, you need to be willing to like give, right? So in the sense that whenever you have a partner, you kind of have to recognize that you're not always going to be the one in front of the camera or on the cover of the magazine or the one that's making all of the decisions. But that goes hand in hand with having a partner that you trust to make decisions and that you trust to reciprocate, right? When it's time for him to give you some of the spotlight. So I think that's like really what is the most important thing about a partnership, is just being able to recognize that you each should receive the credit that you deserve, be willing to share that credit. Because otherwise you end up getting jealous for no reason, right? Like you built this thing together. They do an interview on, Forbes and you don't, you sow this seed of unhappiness for what? Because 1 out of 100 interviews, if you guys did this right, he did or she did. You have to understand that give and take is important, I think, with partnerships. But with Michael, it was super organic because we both used to fence together. So I've known him since we were about 12 through fencing. We didn't live together, but fencing's a small world. So when you're good, you go to these like tournaments, national tournaments, and he would see me there and I would see him there and we would say hi. We'd go to like fencing camps together and, we were chums, not best friends, but friendly. And he always knew me as like this party kid because my parents let me travel to these tournaments alone. And Michael always went with his parents. So he would never be able to come to the party, but he would hear about them. So when he graduated from Harvard and came to New York, he hit me up he was basically like, yo, like, can you take me out? And I said, yeah. And I brought him to his first rave. We had like the best time. And then, from there, I went to him to learn how to code. He was teaching me. And then like we had this natural kind of ideation together that led to Radiate. Michael and I work really well together because, like you said, we have complementary skills. And he's picked some things up from me, and I've picked up some things from him that make us better as a unit. And I think one of those things is like, at least for me, like I never pretend that I'm right, or like I never think I'm right. I just have an opinion, right? It's like kind of like Socrates in the sense that like I'd rather know nothing and just like help people get to the right answer than to pretend I know everything and end up at an answer that I dictated. And so for me, working with Michael is good because we don't put our foot down with each other in the sense that like we just listen to opinions and we get to like what that happy median is. And I think that has led to a lot of great product decisions. I think it's led to a lot of great moments, whether it's like a party that we threw here or figuring out what kind of merch to make. It's one of those things where we always just work together to get to where we both think we should be. And I don't think there's ever been a time when, he's wanted to do something that I didn't want to do. And by the end of the conversation, it was, him being like, I'm just going to do it this way. And vice versa. I don't think there's ever been a time where I wanted to do something and he didn't want to do it. And I said, well, I'm just going to do it this way. The only time that happens is we do have like, basically we'll set time limits for each other. So we would be like, hey, like, I'm going to send this email unless you say no within 15 minutes. And like, maybe he didn't want to do it, but if he didn't say no in 15 minutes, it got sent. So that's the one thing that we do with each other. But beyond that, I think it's a very good dynamic just to like be able to share. And Michael and I do that together with each other pretty well.
It's amazing, man. And again, it's like just indicative of your, I think, emphasis that you place on community, like it shines through in the product and the company that you've created. And it shines through in your working relationship with Michael. And it certainly shines through like my friendship with you. Like I have really appreciated that in you, brother. So final question. This is something I ask all my guests. So it doesn't have to be just kind of first thing that comes to your mind. What, Phil, is the thing that makes you feel most free?
A deep question. The first thing that comes to mind is being able to wake up without stress. Kind of like, I guess what I'm referring to right now is like the stress of having to wake up for someone else. Meaning I wake up for myself these days in the sense that like, I don't have a 9 to 5 where if I wake up late, I get in trouble. So it's not like I wake up with a panic. The only reason I wake up is because I want to keep on, working on the thing that I'm working on and to see the people that I'm working with and to see the friends that I've accumulated throughout my life. But it's not like I'm waking up like, oh shit, I have to be at this place at this time. Most of the time, right? In general. So I think that's what I feel like right now is the most free feeling. It's just like being able to wake up and know that it's up to me to either make this day awesome and productive, or it's up to me if I want to make it more of a relaxation day, or it's up to me if I just want to kind of go back to bed, So I think that's freedom as I feel it right now. So yeah, I think that's what makes me feel the most free right now is just being able to wake up and kind of choose what I want to do for in general.
Yeah, man. And it's like, what I'm hearing is just that sense of purpose, right? Like you've identified your purpose and you're living in alignment with it. You get to enjoy that freedom. And with that, because you've taken the accountability and responsibility to build this business, now you get to enjoy that freedom. I am right there with you, man. That's super important to me too. It's just freedom over my time, because that's the most important, most valuable asset that I think we have.
Yeah, 100%. I love you, by the way. I know you, I tell you this whenever we talk, but I love you and I love your vibes and I love what you've been doing for the world too. What I think is the most awesome thing about us is that we both started our journeys at the same time, along Spencer and Patrick, aka Jenga,
who have both also been on the show. So we're completing the whatever the version of trifecta is with 4 people. We're completing the quarfecta.
The prophecy foretells.
The prophecy. Oh my God, amazing. Not just another lodge party. No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Brett. I really appreciate the kind words. And yeah, man, I'm so grateful for our friendship. I'm really privileged and excited to introduce you to the listeners of this show. And we're definitely going to have you back on with Michael. Maybe you, me, Spencer, and Pat can do like a four-way on the podcast.
That'd be awesome.
And yeah, man, enjoy your weekend. I miss you. I love you. I hope you come visit me here in Mexico soon.
Awesome, dude.
And
well, thank you for having me. And thanks to whoever's listening to this right now. I appreciate you. And I hope the world keeps on giving you what you want.
Yeah. Oh, real quick before we end, where can people find out more about Radiate, you, the whole enchilada?
Radiate, you can find out more. All the socials are Radiate the World. The website's radiatetheworld.com. It's Radiate in the App Store. And for more on me, you can just go to my Instagram. I'm pretty open. You can DM me if you want. It's Now That's a Good Picture. Or you can email me, philip@radiatetheworld.com.
Amazing. Phil, I love you. Talk to you soon,
I
brother.
love you too, man. Keep on doing what you're doing. I'll catch you soon.
Thanks. Peace. Thank you so much for everybody who tuned in to this episode of the Sacred Giggle podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all got a lot of value out of it. If you did, if you've been enjoying the show so far, it would mean the absolute world to me if you could leave us a review, like, subscribe, follow the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Instagram at the Sacred Giggle Podcast. Your support means the world. This podcast is truly a labor of love, and your support is going to help us bring more and more of these great conversations to you. So thank you again. Have a beautiful day, and see you next week. Peace.